and understand that nothing,
Hmm.
even those things you love, is permanent. And we have to learn to understand that the attachment we create by not understanding that is a sort of like a clinging on to something that can't possibly offer a lasting happiness.
Hey there, Vibers. Welcome to the Vibe with Kai podcast, where we keep it real, we keep it relatable, and we keep it a little bit funny as we dive into all things mental health, ADHD, and introversion. My name is Kai. I'm your host, and each week we're going to tackle life struggles with honesty, humor, and a whole lot of heart. So, whether you're here for practical advice or a little validation or just a laugh about what life is like as an adult in today's world, listen, you are in the right place. We are not about toxic positivity here. We are all about being genuine to each other and to ourselves. And we're talking about real things. And we want to encourage each other and remind you that you are not alone. With that said, my friends, sit back, relax, and let's vibe through this together and enjoy today's episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast.
What up, Vibers? It's your boy, Kai. Welcome to another episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. In today's episode, we're diving into finding joy, purpose, and peace, even when life feels a little messy. My guest today is Janet Ettele, an author who weaves Buddhist wisdom into powerful, relatable stories. And get this, the Dalai Lama himself wrote the foreword in her for her latest book, How Joyous Efforts Work. No big deal, right? No big deal. Just the Dalai Lama. No big deal. But just awesome. And so today we're going to explore how ancient teachings can help us handle stress, overcome struggles, and shift from self-focus to serving others. Janet's insights are practical, they're inspiring, and they might just change the way that you see the world. So I'm really excited to have Janet Ettele join us today. Hi, Janet. Thank you for hanging out with us today.
Hey, Kai, thanks so much for having me and for being here. It's great to see you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know I'm really happy. I'm really excited to speak with you. I want to start off by I want to kind of set the stage a little bit for everybody that's listening that may not be familiar with who you are. So your journey into writing Buddhist inspired fiction is quite a unique journey. If you don't mind, what can you explain what inspired you to present Buddhist teachings through storytelling rather than like traditional nonfiction?
Well, it wasn't a route you would expect, I don't think. I mean,
Sure. Hmm.
I'd started, I'd been become interested in Buddhism because I'd been reading some books, and that was back in 2008. And everything I read just seemed to make so much sense and be so practical and applicable.
Hmm.
And then, but everything I read said if you want to weave these teachings meaningfully into your life, you need to find a teacher. And I live in Connecticut, and I have not seen any Buddhist temples around here. And
There's none. There's not. That's not what Connecticut is known for.
well, wait,
Yeah.
you'll hear because I figured I'd have to go into New York City or to Boston to
Sure.
find somebody, and I went online, and it turns out that 5 miles from my house, 5 miles from my house in a little town called Reading, is the Tibetan Buddhist
Mhm.
Center for Universal Peace.
No way.
Yeah, and that's where I met Tibetan Buddhist monks who just were amazing teachers, amazing examples of how these practices can just the way they live. I mean, it's like you enter that space, it's like you've just taken a bath in joy. You just like
Sure.
a joy immersion. I
Yeah.
love these people. Anyway, the I had been going for about 2 years, and I was attending one of the classes there, and there was a break, and I got to talking to this man who I had not seen there before. He was visiting from New Jersey, and we were both just talking about how there's a philosophical view that is so practical and had been so helpful in each of our lives that we both were saying, "God, it would be so nice if we could just find a way to present this to
Hmm.
Westerners, because we can feel, there's a lot of stress in this culture,
Sure.
a lot of
Oh
stress,
yeah.
a lot of
Absolutely.
anxiety, a lot of anger. People are pissed off
Yeah.
at one side or another. And
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know about you, but I feel like it really doesn't need to be this way.
I agree. I agree 100%. And actually, I want to touch upon what you just brought up here. How I mean, there's a lot of I guess misconceptions about Buddhism. A lot of just like people just don't know. They have like this mindset of what they think it is. I think a lot of like I think many people think of Buddhism as something abstract or like just like uh, odd, different than what they might be used to. So how do you make these teachings accessible and understandable to someone who isn't necessarily on the same spiritual path as you?
Right. Um, well, then that sort of leads to how I wrote the book. So I can just finish telling
Hmm.
you that man happened to be
Yeah, absolutely.
who had this idea. He had a small imprint that he had started on his own to for books specifically to what we call the Buddhist Dharma. And
Hmm.
it was his idea that he had been incubating for a few years to take this teaching called the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life and present it as a published series of books. And so from there, that then the conversation became more like, well, let's create contemporary characters,
Hmm.
Western living lives that are very much like our own that we're living today. I mean, the Buddha was teaching over 2,500 years ago, and a lot has changed in the world, but human
Right.
nature is still the same. Not a lot of
Hmm.
changes there. We
Hmm.
might think there are, but
Right.
um, so it's through story that I think we try to make it more relevant, or I do, to daily life.
Hmm.
Am I missing your question? Did I answer your?
No, you were no, you were no, you were. I was talking about how it can be more accessible to people in the Western culture, and you were explaining how your book does that. Yeah,
And I think that's the hope in the books. And I think for some people it has been. It's non-threatening. You don't have to go into a Buddhist temple. You don't have to sign up for anything. You know,
sure,
even the
sure.
Dalai, it's not a cult. Even the Dalai Lama has said, just stay, people should stay with their traditions. But if you find
Hmm.
something in these teachings that's helpful in your life, then
Yeah,
why not? It's not
and
asking
apply
you
it.
to
Yeah,
abandon anything or to, except for,
right.
abandon the unnecessary suffering.
Right, right. And speaking of the Dalai Lama, and like I brought this up in the beginning here, your latest book, How Joyous Effort Works, has a foreword from the Dalai Lama. Uh wow. What was it like knowing that he not only acknowledged but supported the work that you're doing?
Kai, you know what? It's still sinking in, and I that
Sure.
that happened quite a while ago, but it was really it has meant so much to me. I,
Yeah.
there really aren't words, but there's a process. And one of my teachers at the Buddhist center where I've been studying put me in touch with somebody in the Dalai Lama's office that I could
Hmm.
write to and explain what my intention was, what my books were about. I mapped out what are some of the Buddhist teachings that are presented in the books with an index in case they wanted to check how are things
Hmm.
presented. Um,
Sure.
and it didn't take them very long. It turned around fairly quickly, and I will never forget opening that email
Yeah.
with the PDF of with the Dalai Lama's signature and the little emblem of the office of
Yeah.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama was, yeah. I don't know if I have adequate words to explain how much that has meant and continue and will always mean to me.
Right, right. And it's amazing. And so I want to dive into the core themes of the book because you had mentioned earlier that like it's not a matter of just trying to like fully change the ways, but maybe if you can get something out of it, then you can apply it to your life. Take what you feel works. So I want to dive into some of the core themes. And talk about some of the book's lessons that people might get out of this. So your book follows Troy, who was a young man navigating his struggles. What can readers learn from Troy's journey about overcoming their own personal obstacles?
About overcoming what in personal obstacles?
Overcoming their own personal obstacles.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think they're pretty universal obstacles,
Mhm.
probably for most of us, and maybe in different causes, but experiencing things like um, making a mess of your life, perhaps, and at certain times
Sure.
where you've made some bad choices, having been hurt, suffering grief, um, uh, just all the things that happen just as a result of being alive. None of us comes through
Mhm.
unscathed, and
Sure.
he in his journey, it sort of follows the adage of when the student is ready, the master appears. And so he's in the previous three books, he's met a teacher by chance. And in this book, the fourth book, he's had so much that he's learned already that has made an impact on his life that he's decided he wants to have a deliberate intention of, like, I'm going into this stuff and I really want to deepen my study and deepen my practice. And so, although the books are written in such a way that they can be read in any order, each one is a standalone book. There is some previous things he's learned, and those are woven
Sure.
into each book. So there's so many things to understand. One of the first things that's presented in this fourth book is known as the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, which was the first teaching the Buddha taught back in the day. And it's the truth of suffering. And people think, well, that's a downer, who wants to think about suffering? But
Sure. Yeah.
there's so many ways of suffering. There's
Mhm.
suffering. It's like really obvious you're in pain, something's hurt. But there's a lot of suffering that just by not understanding something simple like impermanence,
Mhm.
if we don't understand if we don't, like, we can get it in our head, but to like really bring it into your heart and understand that nothing,
Mhm.
even those things you love, is permanent. and
Sure.
and we have to learn to understand that the attachment we create by not understanding that is a sort of like a clinging on to something that can't possibly offer a lasting happiness. So when you begin to adjust your expectations a little bit,
Sure.
you're not thrown off
Mhm.
by think, oh my God, this person broke up with me, or my car got a dent in it or something. You kind of condition your mind to understanding some of these realities. We learn to understand things like cause and effect, which you can observe in daily life. This happens and you
Mhm.
do an action, which is what karma literally means. It's like an action will deliver a result. And so we start to cultivate mindfulness of what's behind these actions we take,
Sure.
and
Sure.
understand that whatever we're doing, we're creating the causes and in many ways the conditions for those results to manifest.
Right. Right. The words that stand out to me is the words, or the words joyous effort. Like those two words stand out to me. And it's a central theme of your book here. And when I think of the words joyous effort, I think of the people out there that struggle to find joy in daily work and daily responsibilities. It's tough to find joy in those things. So how does Buddhism redefine the way that we approach effort and motivation?
Well, again, it's sort of being aware of what is your intention in that effort.
Sure. Yeah.
And this is my opinion. Okay. So
Mhm.
in this story, how joyous effort works, it's when we understand the value of something. And in Troy's case, it's the value of deepening his study, deepening his practice, and putting that effort in to be mindful, to not be reflexive. Because he had
Uh-huh.
an issue with a temper and he would get into fights, and that wasn't something he wanted to keep doing. Um,
Mhm.
so you learn to understand so many things differently, but whatever it is, when you know the value of something, of what you're applying your effort toward, that effort is going to be joyful or joyous,
Sure.
right? Because it's like, I'm pumped to do this because this is what I'm after. This is what I'm striving to accomplish. And because of that, doesn't mean you don't have to take a break once in a while and take a rest, because we need to restore ourselves also. But I think for, as much as possible, one of the things that I think is helpful for people to understand in their own reflection is, what are their core values? What are the things that really mean the most to them, in experiences and how they're living their lives, and to be in alignment with those values. Then your resistance isn't going to be as strong, and your joy in doing whatever that is will be more organically arriving.
Right. Yeah, I love how your writings explore, and I mentioned this in the intro as well, it explores the shift from self-focus to serving others, right? Can you just talk a little bit about, I feel like this goes without saying, but I think sometimes we just need to hear it. Why does helping others bring us joy?
That's a big question. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I feel like as I'm listening to you, I've got like all these different things I want to say at the same time, and I can't do that. So,
Oh, you can. No, I get it. Yeah, we can go ahead, Joe.
so, well, one of the things the first thing that pops into my mind is, I don't know about other people's experience, but I've never been more miserable than when I've been like the most self-absorbed, focusing on my own. Oh, it's all about me. That's not a happy place.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Then the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is interdependence, right? One of my teachers says, and I love this, he said, my happiness depends on your happiness.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. And there's some
Yeah.
real truth in that. When the people, whether it's the people you love who are close in your life, who of course, when they're happy, you're happy. When they're not happy and they're suffering, right? It hurts.
Uh-huh.
And so you do what you can to see what you can do to help ease their whatever that suffering experience is. But one of the things we also is presented in this fourth book more deeply is this idea of cultivating equanimity, and this takes practice, this takes study and practice and effort, joyous effort, right? Is to learn to expand that so that it's not just those people who are closest to you that you love and want to see happy. You try to begin to little by little expand that outward to more people in your community, or then you can spread it out further and further. And while that doesn't mean you're out there knocking on everybody's door, bringing them, fruitcake or something, you're going in your mind. That's your effort. That's your wish. And it becomes, as we think these things through, it sort of like becomes more familiar in your own mind. It's something you're mentally rehearsing, so that when you are out and about during your day, a perfect stranger, you're just going to feel that sort of outpouring for that perfect stranger of wishing them happiness, even if you don't say a word to them. But of course you can, so there's, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I'm curious, because I'm a recovering people pleaser, right? So sometimes it's really hard for me to find joy. Um, it was, at least, when I felt like I was so reliant on making sure that the people in my life were happy and satisfied. And if I felt like they weren't happy or satisfied, I wasn't happy or satisfied. And it was hard for me to self-validate, which I think is important sometimes. There might be people listening right now, because I see this in comments a lot. Like, people really get down on themselves because the people around them are not, are not happy, and they feel like they're doing their best to appease them. Um, but where does the self validation come in, and how important is that, just in general, for these teachings? Because I know there's going to be people that are listening that are going to be thinking that.
Sure. And I can appreciate that. It's when you've tried really hard to do everything you can to help somebody
Yeah,
and it falls apart,
yeah,
it's not because you didn't try, right? And
mhm.
sometimes, and so as I'm saying this, I'm not saying this is easy, right? I'm just
Sure. Mhm.
that we learn to also understand, there's this idea of attachment, and that can come in the form of being attachment to, what we think should be the outcome. And sometimes it isn't the outcome. And we begin to realize it's really not about us,
Mhm.
and in a way, even though the outpouring, oh my gosh, so much energy pouring out to help that other person or other group of people, and it's just not working out, that feeling we're having is more about us than about them,
Mhm.
which is, I'm
Mhm.
not saying that's dismissive or in a way like get
No, I
over
get it.
it.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just saying but we can maybe have that objectivity or learn to
Right.
begin to have some of that objectivity to recognize, okay, this isn't about me. I've done my best. And
Mhm.
sometimes there are times when we have to pull back. One of the things that's really important to understand is what our own capacity is,
Sure.
and we
Mhm.
don't all have the capacity to do it all.
Mhm. Right.
Somebody's having a
As
hard,
you,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Please. Yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to
Mhm.
say, just a simple metaphor is like if someone's having a heart attack, I know I don't have the capacity to help that person because I don't know what to do.
Sure.
But
Sure.
if you have a cut and
Sure.
you need a Band-Aid, I know how to take care of that.
Yeah, sure. No, I get that. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about one of the things that you write about. You talk a lot about the three stages of wisdom, which is listening, reflecting, meditation. How can that kind of shift a person's, I guess, perspective on the challenges that they're facing in their life?
That's a really good question. I think, so those three stages of wisdom you mentioned um, are taught in the Buddhist teaching. I think we can apply that to anything that we're trying to
Right.
learn or master. And I think we have to, again, have some patience.
Hmm.
Patience was the third book, How Patience Works, and that's a big topic too. But one of them is just being
Right.
patient with the practice, having patience with the teachings. They take a while um, to absorb. So I think that's why we listen to the teaching, for instance, or you're reading a book,
Mhm.
and you don't want to take anything at face value. You don't want to just kind of accept something because someone told you it's true.
Mhm.
And that's where the reflection comes in. You really want to think about it and
Mhm.
measure it. And if you have a teacher that you can talk to and bring your questions to and debate with, challenge these things, that process helps to kind of deepen that learning of what you just listened to or read. And then the meditation is literally, meditation means to familiarize your mind to something. And so you're taking what you've learned and what you've reflected on, and then you kind of focus on what that is. And the more you do this, the more you are familiar with this concept or whatever it is. And that's, again, like we were speaking about a few minutes ago, that's when you're not going to leave it on the cushion, because you will
Sure.
have really been dress rehearsing it in your mind all this time, so that when you're confronted with a circumstance or a situation, you're like, okay, I've got this. I know what I need to do or not do.
Right. Right. That makes sense. What are there any misconceptions about Buddhism that you feel like, if you could pick one, like, misconception about Buddhism that you would love to dispel, what would that misconception be?
I don't really know what people's misconceptions are, but I
Sure,
have a
sure.
feeling, maybe some of them think it's just kind of this woo-woo thing that's like out there and no, with no grounding in reality. And that is a huge
Hmm.
misconception, because these teachings have known things 2,500 years ago that physicists are now recognizing,
Right.
things like how,
Right.
you know, anyway.
Yeah, no, I get, well, I guess one of the, like, as I was doing my research on this, like, some of the things that I read from people, because I love to just read all sides of this so I could just get like a full understanding. And I think sometimes people have like uh, they feel as though sometimes the advice is, just let go or be mindful, and people feel like in reality it's just not that simple, right? And I feel like that probably could be another misconception that people have, that like that Buddhism doesn't acknowledge that, like, nobody's saying it, that this would be simple. Um, have you heard that kind of like talk before, like people being like just let go,
Let
be
it go.
mindful? It's
Yeah.
no, I can't do this too. It's
Yeah.
that's
That's
not, it doesn't work like that.
those are just words. They're not rooted
Yeah,
in
yeah.
anything. And so one
Hmm.
of the, when we start to study Buddhist wisdom,
Yeah.
that's a really deep understanding. And I
Right.
wouldn't do it justice in, a 5-minute conversation with you, but it's something that in the teachings is presented, which includes this
Hmm.
idea of, well, Kai, we need another
Hmm.
time slot to go into this, because it's
Sure.
so deep
Hmm.
and it's so vast. But
Hmm.
when we have this understanding, it's so much easier to let go, because we
Hmm.
realize the lack of um, something that's substantial to hold on to.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense. I get it. Yeah, and because as I was like reading through like a lot of what people are saying, I think it also came down to what some people, and I hear this a lot in the on the mental health side as a content creator, talking about, because I talk about positivity, I talk about good energy, I talk about that a lot, and I always want to make sure I don't go too far, because I one of the common things that I hear from my end, and I read from a Buddhist misconception as well, is that there's this thing called toxic positivity, right? That people feel that sometimes it, either my good energy talk or the Buddhism talk, it's tough to balance optimism with acknowledging real struggles and suffering, and things like that. Like, I feel like people struggle with that sometimes, because I understandably so. What would you say to those people that think that it's just toxic positivity and it's not acknowledging real struggles and suffering?
I would say in the Buddhist context, that actually doesn't apply, because that's one of the things we
Hmm.
acknowledge is, like I said, in the Four
Hmm.
Noble Truths, the truth of suffering. The
Hmm.
second noble truth is the truth of causation, that there are causes
Uh-huh.
for our suffering.
Right.
Because there are causes, that means when we really understand them, is the third noble truth, which is the truth of cessation, meaning we can stop creating those causes.
Hmm.
And the fourth noble truth is the truth of the path, which means,
Right.
understand these, and then there's a way to reduce the suffering.
Hmm.
As long as we're human, we're going to have
Hmm.
suffering. We're born, we get old, we die.
Hmm.
It's not always a fun process,
Sure. Sure.
but as we adjust our mind and our understanding, we learn to live through these experiences differently. We learn to live
Hmm.
through them with If you look at the Dalai Lama, he's laughing. When I
Sure.
see him, I see
Yeah.
him needing to be supported by people to help him walk. When he lost his country, he had to walk over the Himalaya mountains. They didn't have things to keep him warm. They just had to get the hell out of Tibet
Mhm.
to save their lives. And he still laughs. He still is joyful. He doesn't hold anger toward the Chinese government. I mean, toward the Chinese
Right.
people. And, the government is a
Mhm.
different story in terms of that he recognizes the harm that they're causing.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. And by the way, I apologize if you hear any noise from the outside of my window. They decided during the podcast today that they're going to start trimming the hedges and right outside my window. So if you hear anything, if you hear anything, that's what's happening. And there might, as you talk, there might be a point that I put myself on mute so that it doesn't, so that
oh,
it's not distracting or anything like
I
that.
thought someone was
So,
vacuuming in the next room or
yeah. Yeah, luckily like when I go back and do everything, like I'm able to edit it out. It's just like, why are you choosing right now? You're choosing right now to do it right outside my window. He's literally like doing it right outside my window right now. He'll probably be done in a couple of minutes, but but no, that makes sense. And if you don't mind, I want to talk. I want to give some people some like actionable insights
okay.
here that they can that they be able to maybe take into their daily life. Just something to try, just to kind of maybe introduce them slowly into this, and maybe it might be something they want to explore a little bit more on their own. Um, we talked a lot about shifting the focus from personal happiness to the happiness of others, right? We talked about that in the beginning. Um, what are there any small tangible things that somebody can do today to begin that shift? Like as soon as they're done listening, they're like, okay, I like Janet, I like what she's talking about. I want to try just doing some small things. Are there any small things that people can try today to help shift them into that mindset?
That's a great question. I On that vein of bringing happiness to others, is that what you're asking me? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, starting to like being able to start that shift
Okay.
into shifting from personal happiness to the happiness of the people around you.
All right. All right. So this is a bit of a Dharma lesson. Is that okay? Okay. So this is you. And first of all, I always encourage to cultivate a meditation practice. And I understand that's hard to do because we're so busy and it's like, I can't just sit there. Right.
Mhm.
And I'll share with my technique that I came up with years ago because I was always in action. I was like, I can't just sit here.
Mhm.
So I had one of those old fashioned coffee pots that you put on the stove and it perks.
Sure.
So I
Yeah.
thought, okay, I'll get that started. And while the coffee's perking, at least I'll know
Mhm.
something is being accomplished. So that was
Mhm.
my method that let me sit for, what was it, 10 minutes to start.
Mhm.
And that was my beginning.
Right.
So whatever you can manage, if it's 3 minutes, just to begin. The beginning thing is just to pay attention to your breath. You can have your eyes closed, you can have them halfway closed. It's up to you, whatever you're comfortable with. But sit comfortably, your spine is straight. You want to make sure you're not like leaning one way or the other. So just be really straight
Mhm.
and just breathe in through your nose and out. And just do that 3 times and see if in those 3 times, if you can keep your attention just on that breath. And then you can start to think about someone that you love, someone that's really close to you and in your heart that you really love, and think about how much you wish for that person to have happiness. And you just think about that and just sit with that for a bit. And then think about that person that is a random person, the person, trimming your hedges, not someone really,
Mhm.
but just think about, wow, I wonder how that person is, how I wish for that person to have happiness. You don't have
Right.
any like baggage with that person. It's
Sure.
what we call
Sure.
a neutral person. and you start wishing for their happiness. And then the next one that gets a little trickier or maybe a lot trickier for some people, is to think of that person that's your pain. Can I say pain in the ass? That's
Yeah.
some,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
we could go deeper with the vocabulary, but that person that really just, pisses you off, you just, they're pain in the ass. They do nothing but annoy you. This is where it's hard. You bring that person into your mind and you think, wow, what must it be like for that person? What is their suffering? And how different it would be if that person could experience happiness. And you start wishing for their happiness. And then,
That requires a lot of patience,
yep.
which is
But
something you talk a lot about.
yeah, and that's the joyous effort. Actually, my third
Yeah.
book, How Patience Works, really illustrates that a lot.
Uh-huh.
Um, the so if you can get through those three things, then celebrate. It's like, I did it. Just really feel good about what you did, and
Uh-huh.
then sort of make an intention for yourself that I'm gonna try to put this into practice today. Don't expect
Uh-huh.
immediate results, but if you
Right.
can do that every day, however many minutes you can spend doing that, whether it's 3 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes, we can expand that. If that's how you begin, you can expand that further and further.
Right. I feel like I'm on the right track because there I could have easily been like, trimming the hedges, why are you doing this now? But like I also know in the back of my head, like that guy, he's just doing his job. Like he's not trying to like like he doesn't know that I'm recording a podcast right now. He's getting paid to do the hedges outside. And like that's his job. He's not causing any issues. This is like this right here. This is all a privilege. It's not like something that's mandatory or my life or death or anything like that. It's so easy for me to not get upset about
Right.
that, and people oftentimes laugh at me because like it takes a lot to bother me, like a lot. Like I grew up in New Jersey, driving the New Jersey Turnpike, which is probably one of the craziest places. If you're gonna learn how to drive on the Turnpike in New Jersey, you can drive literally anywhere in the world. And so like there's people cutting you off, there's people giving you the middle finger, there's like all that kind of stuff. And like none of that bothers me. I'll probably be irked for like half a second, but then I'm like, you know what? I'm alive, they're alive. I don't like that situation that just happened, but it is
Right.
what it is. I hope you get there safely.
Yes.
Like it's just like I it takes so much to bother me. And I know that that in and of itself bothers some of the people in my life. I can tell you that. Because
Yeah.
they'll wonder like, why are you not mad that he's trimming the hedges right now? But why should I be?
Exactly. And
What's the point? What does that get me?
exactly. I mean, that's the logic. That's the
Yeah,
logic. It's like, what is that about? And how much of your day are you going to let that just kind of trash?
right. Right. He's
You know,
going about his day. I'm going about my day. It is what it is.
he's a blip on the screen, or
Mhm.
she. Yeah.
Right, right. It's not gonna like as soon as they're done, and as soon as we're done, like we all go about our day in the most positive way possible. And I don't like harboring hatred or like revenge. Like I just don't have that mindset. There's people that have done me wrong in the past, and I don't go out of my way to hang out with them or to give them my time or energy.
Right.
But like I don't like people are like, "Oh, how could you look at this person in a positive light?" And I'll be like, "Well, I learned a lot from it. I
Yeah.
learned a lot from that situation. I didn't like it, but now I'm a better person now because of it."
Right.
And I feel like as reading what you write about and listening to you talk today, I'm like, I think I'm on the right path. I think I'm doing okay, and I hope that
Absolutely.
people listening get something out of that too.
I'm sure they will, because it's
Yeah.
we're human. We're all human. We're all
Hmm.
familiar with those emotions. We're all familiar with those encounters, and we know what it's like to like hold on to something and
Hmm.
let it eat at us, And then how that radiates out to the people around us. We're not pleasant to anyone. We have this like
Right.
badge on us saying, I'm pissed off today. And so therefore I have this license to
Uh-huh.
be an obnoxious
Right.
asshole to everybody.
Right.
That's not
Right.
helpful. And it's
It's not.
not beneficial. It does
Hmm.
nothing. So
Hmm. I'm with you 100%. And that's why I hope that people are listening right now. I hope that you understand that like some of the stress that you're harboring, some of the anger, some of the I don't know, this pent up negative energy that you're holding, you don't have to have that. There's ways to go about mediating
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. Um, if I have a minute, do I have a minute left?
Absolutely. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
I actually wrote a blog about this a few years ago. It's called, it's on my website. Helpful Hints from the Wrathful Deities is what the name of the blog
Hmm.
post is. But there's something in Buddhism called wrathful compassion, which is sort of like, it's not saying that we have to be doormats or accept things that are just harmful to others,
Yeah.
or, but we can have that compassionate heart when we're taking the action that is could seem to be forceful. I mean, not violent, but you know what I mean? Like it could
Hmm.
be firm. It just as a parent is with their child. You love your child so much, but if they're going to run into the street or they're about to like pull a knife out of the drawer, not knowing
Hmm.
what it could do to themselves, you're going to stop them in a really firm way to protect them.
Hmm.
So it might seem wrathful or forceful, but it's filled with love and compassion.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It
And
does. Absolutely.
yeah, but if anybody wants to read more about that, that's on my website.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anybody that's listening right now, I'm going to include the links to all of Janet's books and websites and handles. All that will be in the description of this podcast. So all you have to do is click, and it's there, and you can explore. And I implore you to explore this and learn more about it on your own, because you, again, as Janet was saying earlier, it's not one of those things where you just have to totally abandon your way of life and just take on this new life and change everything about you. There might be just little things, as you're reading these books, as you're reading these teachings, that you'll be able to just take and hopefully apply to your life, and you'll find that just like even those little small steps can make your life exponentially better.
Yeah.
Like I feel like just like the little things can go a long way, which is why I appreciate what you're doing and why I was so excited to speak with you today, because I'm like, there's just so much here. And I know you were joking about it before, but like like come back. Like come back. I'm all for, like getting like deep into learning more about this, and hopefully giving transferring some of those teachings and energy and insight to people that might get something out of that. um I have one more question for you,
Yeah.
if you don't mind. I know that there's a lot of people listening right now that are overwhelmed by just life's challenges. If you could say anything to them right now, what would you say?
It'll pass. Everything will change. Things are always in a state of change. And we can, because of that fact, because of impermanence, we have the opportunity to fill that space with the best thing we can. So my encouragement would be to bring that out to the best of your ability and understand that George Harrison wrote a song, All Things Must Pass. There's that.
Mhm.
But to think about in throughout time, we've there's always been some kind of thing going on in the world, right? So to assume that we should be exempt is unrealistic. But so we're going through a time, but we need to really stay grounded in truth and peace and compassion and just, and I know that's not easy for everyone to do, like some of your friends who don't understand why you don't like hold a grudge.
Mhm.
But there are ways to kind of balance that. And I really do hope, if most of the people that have read my books aren't Buddhist.
Mhm.
But if you do read them and you find something, or if you want to speak more, I'm find a teacher, or people can reach out to me as well. But don't just leave it. Don't just because if you just read a book, whether it's mine or someone else's, or attend a talk someplace, and you go, oh, that's nice, it's
Mhm.
not going to change anything for you. You've heard it,
Right.
but you haven't brought it into your heart. And that's what I hope my books do, because of these are fictional characters that we can connect at our heart level to, with
Mhm.
what they're going through. And that, I think that makes the learning a little bit different.
Yes, absolutely. And for those, again, for those of you that are interested, her latest book, How Joyous Effort Works, it's already on sale, right? People can get it and read through it. So it's already there. I'm going to include a link for that in the description of this podcast. I really do implore you to check it out. I want to thank you, Janet, for hanging out with me today. I would love to have you back to talk more. You listen, you pick the topic, I research, and we talk. That's how it works. So like I'm more than happy to go into more detail. So I would love to have you back and all of that. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I loved it. I loved meeting you and being here with you. It was amazing. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. The pleasure is all mine.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you found a little bit of comfort in today's episode, and I hope that you're walking away with a little bit of encouragement, and I hope that you laughed a little bit along the way. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a review. Let me know what you thought of the episode. I really want to hear your voice. I want to hear your story. I want to hear all about your journey. Let's keep the conversation going. Make sure you follow me on all of your favorite social media platforms. Follow me on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it may be, at The Vibe with Kai for more tips, more laughs, and more real talk. Remember, my friends, you are not alone on this journey. We are in this together. And until next time, stay kind to yourself, embrace the journey, and keep vibing. I'll catch you next time. Much love. Good vibes.